Hey, last time we were talking specifically about a guy by the name of Jacob, and Jacob was scared out of his noggin, right? He was pretty scared, and God came and wrestled with him. And I've wrestled with that passage a bit this week. And one verse in particular, Cooper, can you throw up the first verse there for me on there? It says this. This was in Genesis 32:26. Said, then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So God's wrestling with Jacob, and Jacob says, let me go. And the guy, it's Jesus, the incarnate God, Jesus is wrestling with him. And obviously Jacob's not going to beat up God, right? And he says, listen, it's morning. In other words, it's morning. It's time for you to face your fear. It's time for you to stop wrestling with me and face your fear, right? You have to be in the real world and really function. And Jacob says something that's interesting to me, and it never struck me this way until I was looking at it again this week. He says, I will not let go of you. Go put it back up there, buddy. It says, let me go, for it is daybreak. I will not let go of you unless you bless me. I won't let go of you until you bless me. Think about that for a second. What does that mean when you really get into it means that once you bless me, I'll let go of you. Once you bless me, once you give me what I want, then I can be hands off with you. I'm not going to, right now, all night, I've been grabbing onto you as hard as I possibly can because I'm afraid of what my brother Esau is going to do. He's going to kill me. I'm scared of the circumstances ahead of me. I don't know what to do, and all I can do is just cling to you for dear life. I'm wrestling. I'm holding on to you. But as soon as you bless me, I'll let go. Do you do that? Do you do that? I do that. I remember one time I had a really bad bout of it was OCD. It was really bad, and I was struggling. And you wouldn't believe the amount of time I was just wrestling with God, holding on to God for dear life. Oh God, don't let me go. Oh God, please, God. And the pain, right? Or times that it's pain, or maybe it's a breakup, or maybe it's something, and it's so hard, it's so difficult, and all you can do is, you're at the end of yourself, and all you can do is cling on to God. You're wrestling with Him. God, I will not let you go until you bless me, until you fix this. And then once He fixes it, oh, good. That's what happens to Esau today. Or happens to Jacob. Jacob is wrestling with God. He's afraid of what's going to happen. Morning comes, and now he's going to have to face his brother, the brother that's wanted to kill him for 20 years. We'll see what happens. But once he lets go of God, then what? Then what? Let's open up to Genesis chapter 32 and see if we can't make some progress here. God, I ask that you would just bless this word to us, that you'd help us to understand it. God, that you would fill us with your Spirit, and God, that we'd apply this to our life. God, that you'd bring to mind, even as we talk this morning, those places where we are afraid, those times in our life where we've been fearful and we've run to you and we've clung to you. And then as soon as you've blessed us, we let go. And we're like, well, we don't need you anymore, God. I'm fine. God, I pray you'd reveal those times to us and teach us what to do. In Jesus' name, amen. Look at chapter 33. It says, Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two female servants. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. So this is what's happened. Remember, he spent that whole night, he's scared. His brother, 20 years ago, his brother was out to kill him. Okay, that's why he left home, because his brother's going to kill him. And his mom said, I'll send for you in a few days. Your brother will cool off. 20 years has gone by, and brother obviously hasn't cooled off, or they think not, because mom hasn't sent for him. Now he's wrestled all night. He's been afraid, but now the moment of truth is here. Now I have to meet my brother. And so he knows there's a good chance he might die, right? There's a good chance his brother's going to kill him. And so what do you do when you're about to die? you get your priorities straight, right? And that way you do, you start to get things in order. And so that's what he does here. He gets stuff in order. You find out, you ever met somebody where you all of a sudden it's kind of the end is there, they come to this pinnacle moment, and then all of a sudden you see what they really think, you see what they really believe, you see what they really care about, because now they're at a place of reckoning, right? The end of their life, or it looks like it might be the end of their life. And that's what happens here. He's like, okay, and what does he do? He puts people ahead of him in order. He puts people in order of importance. He says, all right, these servants, they're not as important to me, so they're going to go up in the front. So they would get killed first if something happens. And then next would be Leah, which is his wife. Leah and her kids. Obviously, they don't mean as much to him but Rachel, the one that he really loves, and Joseph, they're going to be the last. But I will tell you, he's a man. He is a man. He's grown up a little bit overnight. He's grown up over the last few years because he goes ahead. He's going to be the first one. He's going to face this head on because he's wrestled with God. And look at what it says. It says here in verse 4, but Esau ran to meet Joseph. Can you imagine that? He's looking at the distance, and he's standing there, and he's got all of his family behind him, and he sees Esau, and he's hairy, and he can smell him coming, right? Because he's can't, and he starts running, and you're like, oh, dude, this is bad, because he can't fight for nothing, right? He showed up in the powder blue minivan, right? He's not a man's man. He's not he's not ready to fight, and he's like, this is it. He's running toward me. And it says that he ran and he embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him. You ever been through that? You spent weeks or months worried to death about what is going to happen. You've worked out all the scenarios. You haven't slept in a month, and then it never comes to fruition. He was scared to death his brother's going to kill him. His brother's excited to see him. His brother throws his arms around him and says, oh, man, it's so good to see you, man. It is so good. I've missed you. So, man, the last time I saw you, you wanted to kill me. Imagine that conversation. And he throws his arms around him. Everything he had feared never happened. What do you think percentage of times when you're scared out of your mind, when you're really freaked out, when you're waiting up all night, what percentage of the time when you think about that and you worry about it, what percentage of it does it really happen that way? And what percentage of it is you worried and worried and worried and it never turned out that way? And that's what happens here. He had wrestled with God. He had come to peace with God, and then he goes out and it never happens. God had gone ahead of him, and there was really nothing to worry about. His brother obviously had made peace with the whole thing with his brother. And so he says he threw his arms around him, then they wept. So they're crying together. I mean, this is a really cool moment, right? The big hairy guy and his skinny little brother. And Esau looked up and saw the women and children. Who are these with you, he asked. Jacob answered, they are the children God has graciously given your servant. So they've never seen their kids, right? Never seen Esau's kids. Jacob hasn't. Esau's never seen Jacob's kids. He doesn't know about any wives. He doesn't know. He's like, hey, who are all these people? You know, it's a big reunion. Hey, who are these? Tell me, is this my nephew? Is this my nephew? You must be my sister-in-law. Big hug, you know. This is exciting. It's really cool, man. All of a sudden, all that worry, all that seeking God, all that scared to death, all that clinging to God, right? And that's all good stuff. But all of a sudden, you can just feel the weight. The weight's gone. There's no fear. Oh my goodness, what a relief. So now what do? The most dangerous place you will ever be in your spiritual life is right now. After you've had all this stress and you've clung on to God and you've held on to Him for dear life, and now all of a sudden there's relief and you're not concerned, now you better watch it. Because now is the time when you just release God and you're like, you know what? I'm fine. I don't need God now. I needed Him then, but I don't need Him now. And so I'm just going to let my guard down. I'm going to do the stuff that maybe I wouldn't have done. You know, I was being real careful about my life about a week ago, but now I'm not going to be real careful because, you know what, I don't need God to be happy with me, or I don't need God. I'm just telling you what goes through people's minds. And so it'll be curious to see what happens as we go forward. Hope you're curious. I'm curious. This could be interesting. But Esau, so it says, Esau asked, what is the meaning of all the flocks and herds I met? Remember, he'd sent like barrage after barrage of herds of animals, like one after another, and then all the sheep would come and say, oh, these are from your servant, and these are for you, and it was basically suck up 101, right? One thing after another. And Esau's like, what's the deal, man? What's with all the herds of animals? I mean, come on, ridiculous. And he says, the female servants, let's go back down there. I lost myself. I got excited. But Esau ran and met Jacob. They embraced. All right, then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. Who are these? Okay, we got them. They are the children God has graciously given me. Then the female servants and the children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. So, man, it's really kiss up here, right? Esau asked, what's the meaning of all these flocks and herds? To find favor in your eyes, my lord, he said. Listen, I wronged you. I did wrong to you. I'm trying to make amends here because 20 years ago, I was a jerk to you. I stole, I tricked Dad out of the blessing, right? And I did that at your expense. You know, what I did was bad. I wronged you in a major way. And so he says, but Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. You ever have that? Somebody, you're trying to make amends and you're trying to give something to somebody and you're trying to, you know what? It was my fault. Here, let me pay you for that. Right? And they say, no, I don't need your money. I don't need your money. No, I'm fine. You know, it's no big deal. And so he says, no, please. Jacob insists. He says, no, please. If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me, for to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me favorably. He's like, you have no idea how happy I am right now to be breathing and that you and I are friends and that I'm not going to die. Please accept the presents that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need. And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted. When people are trying to make amends, and I think this is important, when you wrong somebody, like let's say you're involved in some kind of a deal where you cheated somebody out of a vehicle, or you cheated somebody out of some money, right? And it was a long time ago. Maybe it was 10, 20 years ago. But all of a sudden, you meet that person and you have a relationship with God now. You didn't have a relationship with God before, but now you do. And that person's there and you meet him and you can make amends. You're not forgiven because of what you do, but there is within our heart this desire. The right thing is to make it right, right? So when we see Jesus speaking with people in the Old Testament, he'll call somebody and like a tax collector, and he's cheated all these people. I'm going to pay them all back. Why? Because that's the right thing to do. That's the righteous thing to do, is to take care of it. And if somebody tries to do that to you, you don't need it. Let them do it, because that's a part of the process of healing. That's a part of the process of saying, listen, I need to fix this. I was mean to you. I was bad to you. I apologize. I ripped you off for $2,500. I'm giving you $2,500 because I want to make this right. I want to make this right. And I'm not forgiven because I'm giving you $2,500, but it's just by the grace of God and your grace that you're forgiving me. But I still want to make amends. I still want to do the right thing. And God approves of that. And we see that in the book of Matthew, and we see that with Matthew in the Bible and the tax collector. So let's keep going. Then Esau said, let us be on our way. I'll accompany you. But Jacob said to him, my Lord knows that the children are tender and that I must care for the ewes and cows that are nursing. They're young. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. Is that true? Will all of your animals die if you drive? I don't know, that doesn't sound right. I'm not like a big herdsman or anything like that, but I mean, just thinking, wow, that seems a little harsh, right? Every animal's going to die because of that. Then it goes on, it says, so let my Lord go on ahead of his servant while I move along at a pace of the flocks and herds before me and the pace of the children until I come to my Lord in Seir. So listen, you go on ahead to Seir. That's where we're all headed. We're all heading that direction. You don't need to stay back or anything. We'll just take our time. I got a bunch of kids. You know how it is with kids and wives and all that. It's going to be hard to get there, right? So let's just hold off. I'll meet you when I get there. That's what he says. Esau said, then let me leave some of my men with you. But why do that, Jacob? Jacob asked. Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord. Right? Something's going on here, isn't there? For some reason, he doesn't want to hang out here with his brother Esau. He's like, no, you go on ahead. I got something else to do. There's something I got to do, and I don't want you with me in this process. Can't you tell that's what's going on? Esau said, then let me leave some of my men. But why do that? So verse 16, so that day Esau started on his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Sukkot, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Sukkoth. After Jacob came from Paddan Aram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. For 100 pieces of silver he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. There he set up an altar and called it Elohei Israel. Okay. Jacob was supposed to go to Bethel. I'll just tell you that. Jacob was to go back to the promised land. Remember when he had left and gone out? He had met God, and he had said, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to come back here. What is this place that he's going to come back to? This is the place where there's the stairway to heaven, if you remember that. And God, this is where we meet God. This is the place where I meet God. I'm going to come back here, God. If you'll bless me and you'll bring me home, I'll come back to this place. All right? It's called Bethel. He's supposed to go south. He's made a promise to his brother. I'll follow you. But you know what? He don't need God now because he's not in danger. He's not have no fear. He's not scared of nobody. Why would he be scared? His brother's not going to kill him anymore, right? So he's not clinging on to God. I don't have to hold on to God real tight because now things are fine. Now I can go back and do whatever I want to do. And so instead of going down to Seir and following his brother, he sends his brother off ahead, and he's not going to see his brother for a long time. Instead, he goes north to Sukkot. That's like somebody going to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And hanging out outside. He goes to the big city where things are not nearly as nice as where he was supposed to be. It's not where God told him to be. He's already let down his guard and said, I can do what I want. I can do what I want. And I'm not clinging to God because I'm not scared anymore. And what happens when we let our guard down? That's when we don't cling on. Here's what you should do. You cling on to God, and then when things get good, you hold on to him some more, and you keep holding on to him, and you don't let go. But he lets go. And he makes some bad decisions. He makes some bad decisions about where he's going to live. You know where you live matters? I know this because I lived in Seattle. One of the reasons we live here, well, besides God making us come here, but I'm glad I'm here. I love being here. I love raising my son here. I love having a house here. I love being in this area way better than I love being in the den of iniquity. I like being able to walk down the road and not have to look to make sure I don't step on a hypodermic needle. Or take my son to the park and not have some guy tweaking out right next door, or camped out with a tent. And so some people, they just follow the money when it comes to where am I going to live, right? And right now it's the great migration, the great resignation. Everybody's resigning from their jobs, and everybody's getting new jobs, and everybody's demanding all kinds of things. And so it's a very weird time. And people are picking up and they're leaving and going across country for a new job, but they're not taking into consideration the most important factor, and that is, where am I going to live? How am I going to follow God in that place? How can I serve God in that place? Is this a good place for me to raise my son or raise my daughter? Sure, I make an extra $10 an hour, but at the expense of my kids. It's just not worth it. People do it all the time. And so if you're offered something, think about not just money, but think about the total package. God, this is about me serving you. Is there a good church there? Are there people there that I feel like are going to help me to grow in my relationship with God? Is my son going to come under all kinds of influence? When I put my kid in the school, are they going to try to explain to my kid that he can choose today whether he's going to be a boy or a girl? That's the way it is in Seattle. I'm thinking, wow, okay. So he picks up and he leaves, and he ends up going to a different place. It says in verse 34, then Dinah, the daughter of Leah, that Leah had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. So at this point, she's about 15, 16 years old, maybe 14, 15. She's a young girl. And this is the big city, right? This is the big city. And it's debauchery all over the place. It's not a great place to be. And for some reason, she wants to make friends. That's what most girls want to do. They want to make friends. They want to be popular. They want to get to know people. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But there's also the idea of being a good parent and watching your kids and making sure that your kids are safe. And she's just wandering around. It says she went out to visit the women of the land, right? She wants to meet all the other girls, see what all the other girls are wearing, see what all the other girls are doing. I want to be like them. I don't want to be like my mommy and daddy, typical teenager. They're not cool. The girls at school are. And while Shechem, son of Hamor, now who's Shechem? Hamor is the governor. So he's kind of like the king of the area. And his son is a guy by the name of Shechem. The town is called Shechem, and the son is named Shechem, and he's kind of the prince. Probably the most popular guy in town. Everybody likes him. Probably the best catch if you're the freshman girl and he's the senior quarterback and he's like the guy. And all of a sudden, he must have paid some attention to her. He thought she looked good or whatever. And just imagine how flattering that is. The 14, 15-year-old girl and the prince, right? You're like, wow, am I a lucky girl? And I don't know how they got alone, but it says when Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of the area, saw her, he took her. So they got alone. And it says he raped her. He forced himself. The word there is actually, that word is defile. It's the same word that's used when they desecrated the temple. And they defiled it from its holiness. That's what happened to this poor girl. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father Hamor, get me this girl as my wife. This is messed up on so many levels. I don't even know where to start. This is a guy who, he obviously has some feelings for this girl because he likes her. He really likes her. He thinks she's pretty. He loves her. He actually wants to marry her, but he's already defiled her in a way that he shouldn't have. And now we're going to find out that they're actually kind of holding her. They're at his house. And so this guy's answer to doing something bad is to double down and say, instead of just kind of leaving her and trying to fight this, I'll marry her. I'll marry her. And that'll fix my problem. Right? That'll fix the hurt that I did. That'll fix I'm going to do something good in order to override the bad. Is that good? That's not... It's just disturbing. It says, when Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with his livestock, so he did, what does it say here? What did he do? What did Jacob do when he finds out this has happened to his daughter? Jacob, who is now Israel, right? The nation of Israel, that Jesus is going to come through this. He finds out that his daughter's been defiled, and what does he do? What does the word say? Nothing. He did nothing. He did nothing. Nothing about it until they came home. Waits for his sons to come home. Then Shechem's father Hamor went to talk to Jacob. So now the dad of the offender comes to talk to the dad of the victim. and they want to have a talk. And he says, meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the field. As soon as they heard what had happened, they were shocked and furious because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. I think it's interesting that Moses adds in there to help us understand this is something that should not be done. Why does he have to add that in? Maybe that says something about Israel, that Moses has to explain to you that what happened was bad. We live in a culture, man, where we don't even know what's bad and what's good half the time. Moses is like, well, I better explain to you what happened, the rape, that was actually bad. Wow. But Hamor said to them, my son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Oh, my goodness. How did this happen? Let me go back to how this started. Jacob let go of God. He was scared. He was nervous. He was scared. He was holding on to God for dear life. Everything was good. And now he's relieved, and he releases God. He lets go of God. And he says, now I'm going to live on my own terms. I don't have to do what God wants me to do. I don't have to be obedient to God anymore because everything's going fine. Since things are going fine, I can do what I want. And I don't want to live down in Seir. I don't want to go to Bethel. I want to be in Shechem. I want to be in the city. I want to live that kind of wild and crazy life. I want to do that. And so he goes there and he plants his family in a dangerous place, and the result is his daughter gets raped. And then the solution comes now. This is crazy. Shechem said to Dinah's father, oh, here, please give her to him as his wife. Verse 9. Marry with us, give us your daughters, and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it. Then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like, and I'll pay whatever you ask. Only give me the young woman as my wife. This guy's trying to buy off his problem with money. But the proposal is this. This is the proposal. The proposal is, if your family marries my family, if we marry each other, then we will basically all be one community. You'll be a part of our community. We'll be a part of yours. You guys got lots of money, too, and we've got lots of money. We'll marry into that, and then we'll have kids, and we'll become one nation in ourselves. This is exactly the opposite of what God wanted. God told Jacob not to marry any of the Canaanite women, right? That's why he had to go far away to find a wife, right? The whole idea of Israel was that you need to stay pure, right? Stay pure in Israel. Don't intermarry. Because when you intermarry with a person that's not a believer, when you're a believer and you marry somebody that's not a believer, the believer is going to be influenced by that, right? God has never thought that was okay. God wants believers to be married to believers so that they can raise believing children and evangelize together. When you've got a believer and a non-believer together, now you've got this division. You've got this division there. And it was the same then. What would happen is that the Israelites would marry people, if they'd marry people from other religions or other cultures, people that weren't Israelites, they would worship other gods, and the next thing you know, the Israelites would be worshiping other gods. It wasn't like these people that were Jewish and these people that believed in the true God were influencing the pagans. It was always the other way around. I used to hear that all the time when I was a youth pastor. I'd have some boy say, "Oh well, she's not a believer, but boy, she will eventually because I'll lead her to Jesus." The missionary dating strategy, which never ever works, by the way, missionary dating. So let's keep going. Here's what happens. Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. So Jacob doesn't say anything. Jacob's just sitting there like a bump on the log. And now the brothers, they're the ones who are mad. They're the ones that are angry that their sister's been defiled and that this guy's done it. They're furious. But they they kind of hold it in so that they can make a little plot here. It says, they said to them, we can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. Listen, you guys aren't believers. You haven't been circumcised, right? That's not good. See, we're circumcised, right? So if you guys aren't circumcised, how could you be married to our daughter? That's a problem. And we can't enter into relationships with all you guys and share animals and all that kind of stuff because you're not circumcised. But if you were circumcised, that would probably be different. And so we will enter into the agreement with you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But it will not be. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go. Okay. Circumcision hurts. It does. That's why you get circumcised when you're like a baby, right? When you're a baby, you get circumcised. Their plan is they're saying, listen, we can get together, but everybody in town, all you guys, let's say there's 1,200, 3,000, I don't know how many people there, every male has to be circumcised. That's a bad day, right? That's a bad day. I don't know that I'm agreeing to that, right? How do you convince a bunch of guys that are adult men, hey, you know what? We'll be able to do some trade and some stuff. Financially, it'll be good for us. There's just one catch, right? You're going to have to get circumcised. And they're like, oh, my goodness, right? This is going to be bad news. That's not like something that I had a hernia surgery one time. That took a while. I don't even know how long this would take to recover from. You're not going to be doing any heavy lifting anytime soon. And he says, their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. So dad and his son, they both think this is a good idea. They're like in favor of it. The young man who was the most honored of all the father's family lost no time in doing what they said because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So first thing he does, he's like, hey, I'm in. All right, let's do it. I want to get married. And so he goes and he gets circumcised right away. And he comes back and he's like, all right, everybody. This is a good idea. This is going to be good for all of us if we get circumcised, all right? And everything's fine, all right? Let's do it. And he convinces them all. It says, so Haman and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to the men of their city. These men are friendly toward us. Oh, real friendly. I can't walk right now, but they're real friendly to us. They said, let them live in our land and trade it with us. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters. They can marry ours, but the men will agree to live with us as a people only if we get circumcised. Won't their livestock, their property, all their other animals become ours? So they got their own plan, don't they? They have a deceptive plan. We want to marry you in so that we can take all your stuff. They've got a deceptive plan in this whole deal. But the boys, they have a deceptive plan in this whole deal too. Let's see how this plays out. All the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. You got to be pretty stinking persuasive. I can persuade people to do some things. I could not persuade everyone in Atkinson to get circumcised. I just don't think I could do it. Unless I promised them all $1 million. Do you think that would do it? If I promised everybody $1 million, do you think? I don't know. There's a lot of guys I don't think are going to go for $1 million in exchange for circumcision. But that's bad. So it says, all the men who went out of the city gate agreed to Hamor and Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later. What does 3 days later look like after the entire town's been circumcised? So they're all laying around with ice on themselves, trying to not walk or not move or anything because it's painful. Every man in the entire town is incapacitated. While all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, these are actually the biological brothers of Dinah who was raped. And they're the most infuriated. And they're the ones who proposed this whole thing. And now that nobody can get up, nobody can walk, nobody can fight, says 3 days later, when all the men were there in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. So she is actually at their house. This is what they call sweet revenge. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys, or herds and donkeys, and everything else of theirs in the city, and went out in the fields. They carried all of their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the house. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, Shouldn't he have treated our sister like a prostitute? Should they have done that? I'm going to ask you some really basic questions. Did the punishment fit the crime? I got to be honest. If it was my sister, I have a sister. If it was my sister, I'd be angry too. And I can't honestly tell you what I would do or how I would respond. I hope I would respond godly. But these guys snap. They kill every male in the entire town. They slaughter them. And before they do that, they make them all get circumcised so they'll be helpless. That's bad. That is really bad. Think of all the bad things that happen. There's nobody good in this story. There's not anybody good. Jacob's not good. Jacob lets go of God, and it's like, one step forward, two steps back. He lets go of God, and all of a sudden he doesn't care, and things. He's in the worst possible place. He holds on to God for a while until there's no danger, and then he goes on his own, and that's when life is horrible. It wasn't when he was scared. It wasn't when he was nervous about his brother. That wasn't the bad part of his life. The bad part of his life is after he lets go, and then he just falls into the world, and he goes after his own desires and his own thing, and everything he does leads to his daughter being raped, his sons murdering an entire city. And Jacob, even at this point, what does he say? What is his concern? How could you have done something so ungodly? How could you have done something that's going to bring the wrath of God upon us? No. People are going to look at me bad now. This is going to hurt my reputation. That's his struggle here. EJ, you want to come up here and we're going to sing here in just a minute. When was the last time you were in trouble? I'll close with this. When was the last time you were just really in trouble? You were struggling. You were scared. Maybe it was a health problem, and you didn't know how that was going to turn out. You didn't know if it was going to come back cancerous or not. Maybe it was a relative, and they were sick, and you didn't know if they were going to make it. Maybe it was a big financial problem, and you were like, man, this is going to destroy me. Right? If this deal doesn't work out, or if these people think this way, they're going to vote a different way on it, or whatever. We don't know what it's going to be. But you were so nervous and you were so scared that you just clung on to God. You wrestled with Him all night. You didn't sleep the whole night. And maybe it was day after day after day. Can you think of that moment in your head? I know you all have them. There were times when things have kept you up and they were scared. And you ran to God and you held on to Him for dear life. That was probably one of the best times in your life when it came to your relationship with God, because you were grabbing onto God. The worst place you can find yourself is 3 seconds after your brother throws his arms around you and everything is fine. Because that's when we let go of God. And we say, God, I don't need you now. Everything's okay. I don't need you now. We're in good shape. And we don't cling on to God, and we leave, and now we go into sinful things, and we do our own desires, and we're not trying to be careful, and we're not trying to follow Him and please Him. We're just trying to please ourselves, because we'll come back to God when things get bad again. I'll come back to God when I need Him. And the song we sang earlier was, Lord, I need you. Oh, how I need you. I need you now. I need you now. The moment you think you don't need God is the moment you lie to yourself. It's the moment you lie to yourself, and now you live in a lie. No matter where you are, some of you are in that place where you're clinging on to God right now, and you're like, I need you bad. There's others of you that are like, you know what? Everything is fine. There's just this big relief. I can do whatever I want now. No. No matter where you are, grab onto God. Wrestle with him tonight. Wrestle with him. God, what do I have to do to follow you? How can I be obedient to you? God, what are you teaching me? What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? God, don't let me go to Shechem. Make me go to Seir. Make me go to Bethel. God, draw me in the right direction.